Be me, Naomi. A few months back, I was living in a world that made perfect sense. The rules were simple. I saw them play out every day. Online, on the news, in conversations with my friends. It was a world where men had the upper hand, especially in dating. They held the power, they set the terms. They were the ones who did the choosing. We, the women, were the ones who had to navigate a minefield of unwanted messages, unsolicited pictures, and low-effort attempts to get our attention. My best friend Bonnie and I would spend hours scrolling through our phones, sharing screenshots of the latest terrible pickup line or hilariously bad profile. We'd talk about the pressure, the constant judgment, the feeling of being treated like a piece of meat on a digital butcher block. And through all of this, we were united in one unshakable belief. Men who complained about dating were just clueless, entitled, or both. They had it so easy, they couldn't even see it. Then there was Eugene. I've known Eugene since we were kids. He's a good guy. Stable job, decent looking, has hobbies. The kind of guy you'd describe as nice. And for the last year or so, every time we'd hang out, he'd bring up the dating apps. It was like a dark cloud that followed him around. He wasn't angry or aggressive about it, just defeated. He'd show me his phone, the empty inbox, the lack of matches after swiping for an hour straight. He'd talk about conversations that just fizzled out for no reason, or women who would unmatch him the second he didn't give the right answer to a question. And every time, I'd give him the same lecture. It all came to a head on some random weeknight. Maybe a Tuesday. The three of us, me, Bonnie, and Eugene, were at our usual coffee spot. Eugene was in a particularly bad mood. He was slumped in his chair, poking at his phone screen with a grimace. "Another night, another 100 swipes into the void," he muttered, not looking up. Bonnie immediately went on the offensive. She had this way of talking that was less of a conversation and more of a TED Talk on social injustice. "Oh, here we go. Must be so hard having to actually initiate. Try being on the receiving end of 100 hays from guys who look like they haven't showered in a week," I chimed in, trying to be the more rational, helpful one. "She's not wrong, Eugene. The problem isn't the apps, it's the effort. Your profile is probably too generic. Your pictures are probably blurry. You're not giving women a reason to be interested." He finally looked up, and I saw a level of frustration in his eyes I hadn't seen before. "My profile is fine. I had 3 different female friends look it over. My pictures are clear. I mention my hobbies. I write thoughtful opening messages. What more do you want?" Bonnie scoffed. "It's the underlying toxicity. Women have finely tuned detectors for that now. They can probably just sense the male fragility coming off your profile." That was it. I saw something in Eugene's snap. He wasn't yelling. His voice was quiet, dangerously so. "You have no idea what you're talking about, either of you. You live in a different reality. You think it's a paradise for men? It's a desert. You post one picture of yourself holding a puppy and you get 100 likes in an hour. I could cure cancer, and my profile would still get less traffic than a retired librarian's blog." I just shook my head. "That's such an exaggeration. You're just blaming the system because you're not getting the results you want. It's a classic case of male entitlement." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he pulled his old phone out of his backpack. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. He slid it across the table. "Prove it." I was taken aback. "Prove what?" "Prove how easy it is. You're so smart. You know everything about the male experience. So here, create a profile. Be a man for a week. A normal man. Not a supermodel, not a millionaire. Just an average, decent guy. Let's see how many quality conversations you can get." Bonnie started laughing. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would she waste her time on that?" But I saw the challenge in his eyes, and my own arrogance wouldn't let me back down. "Fine," I said, picking up the phone. "It's a bet. A week. What are the stakes?" Eugene leaned back, a bitter smile on his face. $50 says you won't have more than 5 conversations that last longer than 10 messages." "You're on," I said, smirking. "Prepare to pay up. I'll probably have a date lined up by Friday." He just shook his head slowly and said, "Good luck. You're going to need it." That night, I started my project. I was going to create the perfect average man. I called him Alex. For photos, I messaged my cousin, who lives a few states away. He's a good-looking guy, but not in a threatening model-esque way. Just a friendly face, nice smile. He's an engineer, pretty normal. I told him it was for a social psychology project for a class, and he sent me a few pictures without asking any questions. I chose them carefully. One was a clear headshot, smiling but not goofy. Another was him on a mountain trail, a little candid, showed he was active. A third was him playing a board game with friends to show he was social. I cropped it so he was the focus. The last one was him with his golden retriever, the classic foolproof picture, perfect, approachable but not boring. For the bio, I pulled out all the stops. I avoided all the cliches I hated seeing on men's profiles. No lists of emojis, no just ask, no negativity. I wrote something that was supposed to be the perfect blend of witty, sincere, and engaging. Trying to find someone who can tolerate my terrible singing on road trips. IT guy by day, aspiring board game champion by night. My dog thinks I'm pretty cool, so I have at least one good reference. Looking for a genuine connection and someone to explore new hiking trails with. What's the best concert you've ever been to? It was brilliant. It showed his personality, his hobbies, what he was looking for, and ended with an easy question to start a conversation. I said his stats: age 28, job, support specialist, height 5'10", average, the perfect test subject. I showed the finished profile to Bonnie over a video call. She was impressed. Wow, if this guy was real, I'd probably swipe right. You're going to win this bet in a day. My confidence was soaring. I was about to prove Eugene, and every other man who complained, completely wrong. I opened the app, took a deep breath, and started swiping. The first 24 hours were quiet, disturbingly quiet. I spent about 2 hours that first night swiping right on every profile that didn't seem like a bot or have a list of insane demands in the bio. I must have swiped on hundreds of women. I went to bed expecting to wake up to a phone buzzing with notifications. I woke up to silence. Nothing. Not a single match. Okay, I told myself. The algorithm needs time to warm up. It's fine. I checked the phone during my lunch break. Still nothing. I swiped for another hour. By the end of the day, my thumb was sore. I had put in the work. I had engaged with the app. My reward? One match. One. I felt a flicker of disappointment, but quickly brushed it aside. Quality over quantity, right? I looked at her profile. She seemed nice. A few pictures with friends, a bio that mentioned loving dogs. Perfect. I crafted an opening message based on my own bio. Hey, saw you're a dog person too. My golden retriever is basically my boss. What kind of dog do you have? I hit send, feeling pretty good about it. It was friendly, personalized, and open-ended. Then I waited, and waited. 6 hours later, a notification popped up. Finally. I opened the app excitedly. Her reply, LOL, cool. That was it, nothing else. I tried to salvage it. He's a handful, but worth it. So, are you from around here? I never got a response. After a day, her profile was gone from my match list. She had unmatched me. The next few days were a blur of the same thing. A soul-crushing routine of swiping, waiting, and getting nothing in return. The sheer volume of profiles I swiped right on was staggering, hundreds upon hundreds. The silence from the app was deafening. It felt personal. I started to analyze everything. Was it the pictures? Were they too generic? Was the bio too long, too short? I tweaked the bio, swapped out a photo. It made no difference. The digital void just stared back at me. By day 4, I had a grand total of 3 matches. The first was the girl who unmatched me. The second one was clearly a bot. The profile had one blurry picture and a generic bio. It matched with me at 3 a.m. and immediately sent a message with a suspicious-looking link. I reported and unmatched. The third match, however, seemed promising. Her name was, well, I won't use her real name. Let's call her Sarah. She was cute, had a full profile with lots of pictures, and a bio that seemed genuine. I was determined not to screw this one up. I started the conversation, referencing something from her profile about travel. To my shock, she replied, "We actually had a conversation. It wasn't amazing, but it was a back and forth. We talked about places we'd been, movies we liked, the usual stuff." My spirit started to lift. See, it just takes patience. Eugene was just being dramatic. We exchanged maybe a dozen messages over the course of an afternoon. I was starting to feel like a real person again. Like, Alex wasn't completely invisible. Then the question came, the one Eugene had warned me about. Random question, but how tall are you? LOL. My heart sank. I felt this weird, cold dread. This was a test, and I had a feeling I knew the outcome. I typed the truth. I'm 5'10". I watched the screen, the three little dots appearing and disappearing as she typed her reply. But no reply came. The three dots just vanished. I waited for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I sent another message. Is that a deal breaker? No response. I went to her profile to see if I had missed something, and then I saw the message. You are no longer matched with Sarah. Gone, just like that. Decades of life, experiences, a personality, a job, hobbies, all of it, rendered completely irrelevant by 2 inches of height. I just stared at the blank screen. I felt hollow. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a profound sense of worthlessness. For the first time, I felt a sliver of what Eugene had been talking about. This wasn't just rejection, this was erasure. I didn't touch the app for the rest of the day. I couldn't. The next morning, I forced myself to open it again. 2 days left in the bet. I couldn't give up now. I had one new match. I almost didn't have the energy to message her, but I did. This conversation was different. She was engaging, funny, asked questions back. We talked for 2 straight days. It was the most success Alex had had by a long shot. We talked about everything. Work, family, dreams, embarrassing childhood stories. I actually started to like her. I felt a pang of guilt that I was being deceptive, but I pushed it down. This was for science, for the bet. Finally, on the evening of the last day, I decided to go for it. You seem really cool. I'd love to actually talk in person sometime. Would you be up for grabbing coffee this weekend? My hands were actually clammy as I waited for the reply. The notification came almost instantly. "Aw, that's so sweet. But I'm not really looking to meet up with anyone from here. I just got out of a bad relationship and I'm just on here for fun and to chat with people." I read the message twice, just for fun, just to chat. All that time, all that emotional energy I'd invested, for nothing. It was just a game to her, a way to pass the time. I felt like an idiot. 2 days later, just for kicks, I checked her profile again. She had updated her main picture. It was her smiling with her arm around some guy. He was tall, chiseled jaw, looked like he lived at the gym. The caption was a single heart emoji. I felt a wave of something hot and bitter wash over me. It was the exact kind of cynicism I'd always heard in Eugene's voice. The kind I had always dismissed as toxic. The week was over. My grand experiment was a failure. A catastrophic, humiliating failure. The final tally, swipes right, well over 2,000. Matches, 5. Bots, scammers, 2. Meaningful conversations, 0. The $50 was the least of my worries. My entire worldview had been shattered. The simple black and white picture I had of the dating world was now a chaotic, confusing mess of gray. The confidence I had felt just a week ago was gone, replaced by a gnawing emptiness. I had walked a mile in an average man's digital shoes, and all I felt was invisible, disposable, and utterly alone. I knew I had to talk to someone. I needed to process what had happened. My first instinct was to call Bonnie. She was my best friend. She would understand. That was my second biggest mistake of the week. I arranged to meet Bonnie at the same coffee shop where the bet had started. It felt fitting, like closing a circle. Except the person returning was not the same one who had left. I got there early, replaying the week in my head. The silence, the ghosting, the height question, the girl who was just chatting for fun. Each memory was like a small paper cut on my ego, and they were all stinging at once. When Bonnie arrived, she was beaming, radiating her usual brand of militant positivity. "So," she said, sliding into the booth opposite me, "don't keep me in suspense. Tell me you crushed him. I have a dozen ideas for how you can rub it in his face." I didn't smile back. I just pushed the old, cracked phone across the table toward her. "You look," I said. My voice sounded flat, even to my own ears. Her smile faltered for a second as she saw my expression. She picked up the phone, her brow furrowed in confusion. I watched her as she scrolled through the app. I saw her eyes widen as she looked at the match screen. I saw her click on the conversations, the short, dead-end threads. She saw the LOL cool. She saw the profile of the bot. She saw the conversation with Sarah, saw the abrupt end right after the question about height. She scrolled for a few minutes, her face growing more and more grim. Finally, she put the phone down, her expression unreadable. "I don't understand," she said. "The profile is perfect. It's exactly what we said a guy should be." "I know," I replied. "It doesn't matter." I took a deep breath, and then it all came pouring out. I told her everything, not just the stats, but how it felt. The crushing invisibility, the feeling of shouting into a void and not even getting an echo back, the sheer dehumanization of being reduced to a single number, 5'10", and being dismissed as worthless because of it. I told her about the hope I felt during that one good conversation, and the feeling of being played for a fool when she said she wasn't looking to meet anyone. "It was awful, Bonnie," I finished, my voice cracking slightly. "It was like I didn't exist. Eugene wasn't exaggerating. He was understating it. We were so wrong." I looked at her, expecting empathy, sympathy, maybe even a little shock or an admission that we'd misjudged the situation. I got none of that. Bonnie's face had hardened into a mask of disapproval. Her eyes were cold. She leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. "Are you listening to yourself right now? You spent one week in a simulation, and you're ready to throw away everything we believe in?" I was stunned. It wasn't a simulation, it was real. I felt it. "You felt nothing," she snapped back. "You experienced a tiny fraction of the scrutiny that women face every single day. You got a taste of rejection, and now you're crying about it? That's what we have to deal with constantly, but it's worse for us because it comes with the threat of actual danger. You're co-opting male fragility, Naomi." The words hit me like a slap. Male fragility? I was treated like I was subhuman. How is that fragility? How can you hear what I just said and not see the hypocrisy? Her eyes narrowed. "The only hypocrisy I see is you, siding with the oppressors because you had a bad week. Women are allowed to have preferences, height, income, whatever. It's a survival mechanism. We don't owe men our time or attention. What you experienced wasn't injustice. It was just consequences." "Consequences for what?" I asked, my voice rising. "For being average? For not being 6'2"? How is that a man's fault?" "You sound just like them," she said, disgust dripping from her words. "All that talk about male toxicity, and here you are, defending it. You know, I'm really disappointed in you. I thought you were stronger than this." She stood up, grabbing her purse. "This isn't just about a stupid bet anymore. This is about your loyalty, and frankly, I'm questioning it right now." And with that, she turned and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving me completely alone at the table. I sat there for a long time, the silence in the shop feeling as loud as the silence from the app. The rejection from my best friend hurt more than the rejection from 1,000 strangers on a dating app. She hadn't listened. She hadn't even tried to understand. She had a script in her head, a narrative of how the world works, and anything that contradicted it was not only wrong, but a personal betrayal. My experience didn't fit her worldview, so my experience had to be invalid. I had to be the one who was wrong. I realized then that my friendship with Bonnie had been built on an echo chamber. We weren't friends who challenged each other to think better. We were allies in a war, and I had just fraternized with the enemy. I had seen something real, something that proved our collective narrative was flawed, and instead of being curious, she had been furious. I felt betrayed, but more than that, I felt untethered. The worldview that had guided me for years was gone. The friendship that had been my anchor was gone. I was adrift. I didn't know what to do. For a day or two, I just existed. I went to work, came home, watched TV. I didn't talk to anyone. The cracked phone sat on my kitchen counter, a monument to my own arrogance. Finally, I knew what I had to do. I picked up my own phone and scrolled to Eugene's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. I was dreading this. I was preparing for the "I told you so," the smug satisfaction. I deserved it after all. But I had to see it through. I called him. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey," I said, my voice small. "Hey," he replied. His tone was neutral. "How'd the project go?" I could have lied. I could have made something up, but I was done with lies. "Can we meet? There's a park near my place." "Sure," he said. "Be there in 20. We met by the duck pond. It was a cool evening. The sun was starting to set. We didn't say anything for a few minutes. We just stood there, watching the ducks. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a crumpled $50 bill. I held it out to him. "You won," I said, not looking at him. He didn't take it. "I don't want your money, Naomi." I finally forced myself to look at him. His expression wasn't triumphant, it was just weary. "It wasn't about the money," he said quietly. "I just wanted you to see." My shoulders slumped. "I saw," I whispered. "God, Eugene, I saw." I told him everything about the experiment, the silence, the matches. I told him about the height question and the girl who was just chatting for fun. And then I told him about Bonnie, about the things she'd said, the accusation of betrayal. He listened patiently, not interrupting once. He just nodded along, a flicker of recognition in his eyes at certain points in the story. When I was finished, there was a long silence. The only sound was the quacking of the ducks. "I'm sorry about your friend," he said, and it sounded genuine. "That sucks." "She thinks I've betrayed the cause," I said with a hollow laugh. "She thinks I'm defending male toxicity." "You're not," he said. "You're just acknowledging that a lot of guys are completely lost. We're told to be vulnerable, but not needy. Confident, but not arrogant. We're told to just be ourselves. But it seems like ourselves is never good enough. It's an impossible balancing act. And if you fail, you're not just rejected, you're invisible. And if you dare to talk about feeling invisible, you're told you're being toxic and entitled." He looked out over the water. "You didn't feel male fragility, Naomi. You felt what it's like to have no value in the dating market, to be a commodity that nobody wants. It's a lonely place." Tears started to well up in my eyes. It wasn't just for the fake rejection Alex had felt. It was for the real loneliness Eugene must have felt for years. It was for the loss of my friendship with Bonnie, and it was for my own stupid, blind arrogance. "I'm sorry," I said, and this time it was for everything. "I'm so sorry. I was an idiot. I dismissed you, I lectured you, and I never actually listened. I just thought I knew better." He finally looked at me, and he offered a small, sad smile. "It's okay. Most people don't listen." He finally took the $50 bill from my hand. "Let me buy you a coffee," he said. The proper way this time. We walked back to the same coffee shop. We sat in the same booth. And for the first time, we had a real conversation. It wasn't about blame or gender politics. It was just two friends talking about how hard it is to connect with people in a world that seems designed to keep them apart. I didn't have any answers. My old simple worldview was gone, and I didn't have a new one to replace it yet. Everything was complicated and confusing, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was seeing things clearly. The bet was over. I had lost $50, but I had gained something much more valuable, a dose of reality, and a little bit of empathy, and I had a feeling that was a much better prize to win.